So, with this book, The Invisible Men,
Mhm.
you set out on a journey that a took a while, and b
Yes.
I'm assuming you found out some things that you may or may not have been expecting. So, let's start with Mr. Samuel Joyner.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about who he is and how he helped you get started down this road?
I've been writing about comics and comic books for probably going on 50 years, back to the early
Oh, wow.
70s. So I've been doing this a long time. I've written many articles and stuff. And I was going to be writing about a particular artist named Matt Baker. Any research I could find on any articles, any reference to it all only came up with two things. That Mr. Baker died young. He died when he was 37, and he was Black. And at the time, 20 years ago, a lot of people considered him the only Black comic book artist of all time back in the 1940s and 50s, which to me seemed really odd. Just
Right.
in statistically, that didn't make sense to me. So for years, I was trying to track down information about Matt Baker. And I kept asking everyone. Finally, I came across somebody who just casually mentioned, "Hey, have you spoken with Mr. Samuel Joyner, who was a retired Black cartoonist from Philadelphia? He'd done most of his work for the Philadelphia Tribune." Well, Mr. Joyner wrote me this beautiful 4-page letter, detailed letter, talking about meeting not only Matt Baker, but he met E. Sims Campbell, he met Ted Shearer, and these different artists, Jay Jackson. And I'm going like, what? Wait a minute. I mean, who are these people?
Right.
Like some of the names were vaguely familiar, but nobody had I ever come across who ever actually physically met these people. Not only did he write me this letter, but he included a lot of clippings, newspaper clippings, and photocopies of articles. And it was like a starting point for me on saying, like, oh, okay, I will start researching some of these men. Well, I started the normal places where I would start my research would be in newspaper archives.
Right.
There was nothing, and this is something I've been doing for years, and so I knew, I looked at my regular sources, but I couldn't find anything. Well, it dawned on me, I said, well, what about Black newspapers? Well, unfortunately, very few libraries carry Black newspaper archives. They were
Oh,
considered disposable. Very few places have at the time had Black newspaper archives. So I started trying locating. Fortunately, the internet existed at that time. So I started these wide searches, libraries all over the country, trying to find any library that had any Black newspapers. What the white media had never covered was that these men were respected artists. Almost every single one of these guys I cover in Invisible Men was respected, classically trained fine artist, or they had been schooled in art and everything. Every single one of them.
wow.
And which was unusual because most comic book artists of the 1930s and 40s were self-taught white guys from New York. They couldn't find a job, and they were the lowest. It was the lowest rung of commercial art. Well, that's why with this book too, if you notice with each one of the profiles, I talk about not just the man and his career, but the entire history of the man. I go back generations,
Mm,
so you get an idea of where these people came from. It's
right.
not just a snapshot of a year or two at a time. We have a tendency in life to look at people in a microcosm and saying like, oh, they did this for, this is what he was. He was an artist for 2 or 3 years on comic books.
Right.
Like Elmer Stoner is a perfect example. Elmer Stoner was an established, classically trained fine artist of the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s. Established artist. He became a commercial artist. He's one of the very few Blacks to break over into the white media, and he worked almost exclusively in white media. But in comic books, he was he was basically ignored. He wasn't a real flashy artist or anything like that. And what it was is a lot of these guys didn't put a lot of effort into comic book art. It was a way to put food on the table, and it's the
Right.
truth. Will it really was?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it was hack work. Like, we need a comic book story, 8 pages long. How quick can you get it to me? I'll get it to you in 2 days. Okay. As an artist, I can tell you that's almost impossible if
Right.
you're putting a lot of work into it. So you were not seeing, the best of these men, but we have a tendency in our society to look at just the tiniest part of a person's life and not look
Mm.
at the entirety of a life. You know,
Right.
we define people in the most narrow of ways. And what I do again with this book is try to give a wider view of a person's life.
So that said, where can people go if they want to get their hands on a copy of The Invisible Men?
I'm glad you asked. It's literally everywhere, but you can go on Amazon. It's sold through a couple times already. I also prefer people to go to their local comic book shop and probably help some of these guys out because a lot of them are having a tough time right now. And like I say, I think it speaks to a lot of people, you know, because it shows the human experience, you know, of what so many people have experienced. And like I said, these men are inspirational, you know, and I don't care who you are, you should be inspired by their stories.